Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Rowe. We're taking a look at Geometry Part B. This is Lesson 2. We're going to try to find the radius if we know the arc length and the central angle. So let's take a look at some examples here. So here's our first example. So what are we trying to do here? Well, we know the arc length. So we know some section of the circle. So somewhere we know that. And we know the central angle. So that's the angle between the radii, and that's what we know. So we know that this is 1 over 6xy times pi. And what we're trying to find is we're trying to find the radius. So what in the world do we have to do here? Well, let's look at the central angle, or the arc length formula. 2 pi r times n over 360. Actually, that goes like that. Oh, let's just substitute what we know. So we know that L is 1 over 6xy times pi. We know that R is what we're trying to find, so we don't know that yet. So that's still a variable. And we know N. We know N is 20. So 20 over 360. So our job here is to solve for R. So we're trying to isolate R in all of these problems. Well, what I notice here is I've got pi on both sides of the formula. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cancel those out because I can divide pi out and it'll go away. And so let's see. I'm going to make me a little space here. And so that's going to leave me 1 over 6y or 6xy equals, and I can go ahead and multiply 2 here by that to give me r times 40 over 360. And so what I'm doing is I'm just trying to solve for r. So we're trying to find r. So what are we going to do here? Well, my first thing to do would be to reduce 40 over 360 because I don't like working with big numbers. So if I can reduce something, I'm going to reduce it. So 40 and 360 have a lot in common. Namely, they have 40 in common. So I can divide 40 by 40, and that will become 1. I can divide 360 by 40, and that will become 9, making this a lot easier problem to work with. So I'm going to move this over here now. So I've got 1 over 6xy equals r times 1/9. Well, what in the world do I do to get rid of 1/9? Well, I multiply by a reciprocal. Reciprocal of 1/9 is 9. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. Those are going to cancel. And what I'm left with is 9 over 6xy equals r. I can reduce 9 and 6 are both divisible by 3. So that'll become 3 over 2 xy equals r. And there you go. That's it. So substitute and then simplify what you can simplify, and that's it. So using inverse operations just like you did in pre-algebra, algebra 1. If some of you have already taken algebra 2. So just simplifying using inverse operations here. So let's take a look at our next example. So this time, I'm given that L is 7/8 xy. So same procedure here. I'm going to go to the arc length formula. 2 pi r times the central angle divided by 360. I'm going to substitute what I'm given. I'm given that L is 7/8 x times pi. I don't know what r is. That's what I'm trying to find. And I know that n is 50. 50 over 360. So what can I do here? Well, same as the last thing. I've got pi's on both sides. I can divide those pi's out. So they're just going to cancel since they're the same thing on each. each side. So that's going to leave me 7/8 x equals 2r. And actually what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to multiply 2 times 50 to make that 100. So that's going to give me r times 100 over 360. Now again, what I want to do is I want to reduce what I can. I know that 100 divided by 360, those are both divisible by 10. So that'll reduce to 10 over 36. And I know that 36 and 10 are both divisible by 2. So that'll actually reduce down to 5 over 18. Now, if you have your graphing calculator, and this is for those of you who have a graphing calculator. If you don't, you really should get one. It'll help you out a lot. I can actually take that divided by 360 and using this button right here and this option right here to change it to a fraction, I can simplify that to 5/18, just letting the calculator do the work for me. So see, that's the same thing we got. So that's an option. You really should have a graphing calculator by now. So I've got 7/8 x equals 5 over 18r. So now my only option here is to cancel out the 5/18. I do that by multiplying by a reciprocal. The reciprocal of 5/18 is 18 over 5. I will do that on each side. And then my only option here is to just simplify what I can simplify. I know that these are going to cancel each other out. I know that 18 will divide into, well, not 18 will divide in 8, but 2 divides into both 18 and 8. So that's going to give me a 9 here and a 4 here. Again, something you looked at in pre-algebra, algebra 1. And then I just multiply. 9 times 7, 63. And we'll put that over here if you don't mind. 5 times 4 is 20. There's an x there. And that's going to equal r. And folks, that's it. So again, substitute and then simplify what you can simplify using inverse operations to solve for r. All right, one final example. So let's see what we can do here. Again, we're going to start with the formula. L equals 2 pi r times the central angle divided by 360. So n divided by 360. The arc length is 7/18 pi. So we got 2 pi r. N is the central angle. In this case, it's 25. Again, and this is something you can look at right away on these. The pi's are just going to cancel out. Unless you ever have to, try not to work with pi, because a lot of times, especially on problems like this, it's just going to cancel out. Or don't ever work with it until the final step of the problem if you have to. And so that gives me 7/18 equals, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply this times 25. So that's going to give me r times 50 over 360. Now I showed you a trick in the last little problem. I'm going to go ahead and apply that trick here. I've got 50 divided by 360. I want to reduce that, so I'm just going to do math. Option 1 is going to change it to a simplified fraction. And look at that, that's 5 over 36. So I've got 7 over 18 equals r times 5 over 36. Now what do? I multiply by a reciprocal. The reciprocal is 36 over 5. And I want you to notice something else I've done in all these examples. I've worked with the fractions because the fractions tend to work out with some nice things that to happen. And decimals are going to give you a lot of problems. So try to work with the fractions if at all possible. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So those cancel out. And again, I can simplify. I know that 18 We'll divide into 36 twice, so that becomes a 1. And so the final answer here will be, I've got r left over here. I've got r equals 2 times 7, 14, 5 times 1 is 5. And there's my final answer. So I hope this helps you out with that last little section on lesson 2. If not, please let me know in a teacher message or make an appointment for a help session.